It blows my mind that nowadays you can shoot entire short films with just your smartphone. Isn't that absolutely wild? Hey, I'm Olive, your host here at Versus, and I really hope you enjoyed this tiny intro we made for you using the cinematic mode from both the iPhone 15 Pro Max and the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. Both of these devices can shoot in cinematic mode, which may be ideal for those of you who perhaps want to get that cinematic vibe, but you don't want to invest in an entire DSLR camera. So without further ado, hit that subscribe button to be a part of our Versus community, and let's get testing. We will be giving away the S24 collection to 3 lucky winners, so you will have the chance to win either the Samsung Galaxy S24 base model, the Samsung Galaxy S24 Plus, or the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. Make sure to click the link in the description or in the pinned comment down below to enter. For the purpose of having the best and most fair comparison, we have shot all of the footage in 4K 30 FPS. Let's start off with a wide shot of me walking towards the camera. At first glance, the Samsung looks more natural, specifically color-wise, but once I get closer to the camera, you can see that the iPhone is far sharper than the Galaxy. However, the iPhone is a tad overexposed, and the Galaxy does have the more cinematic feel due to its higher contrast and stronger background blur. Interestingly enough, when we tried something like a reveal shot, the iPhone delivered much better results as the focus adjusted very steadily and naturally, which made it seem as if the shot was actually taken on a professional camera. The overall video quality is also very sharp with a good amount of contrast, whereas on the Galaxy, the shadows are far too lifted and the focus shift is super abrupt, which isn't ideal. The S24 Ultra does allow you to make some changes to the video in post, such as cutting the footage or adjusting stuff like brightness, saturation, and contrast, amongst other things. But it's fairly basic. The iPhone 15 Pro Max, on the other hand, can do some really insane stuff. The software basically does multiple recordings in the background so that you're able to switch the focus between objects and subjects in the frame during post-production. I personally think that this is very impressive. It's a great feature, especially considering how easy it is to use. There are also options to change the aperture, which allows you to increase or decrease the blur. When you're filming cinematic videos, smooth stabilization is extremely crucial, and although the iPhone's edge detection is really quite awful, it still does a better job at stabilizing the footage. To be fair, the Galaxy isn't too bad either, but can you see the constant glitching that's happening? I mean, what is going on? Perhaps a software update is needed since the phone is still very new, but whatever the issue is here, it needs to be fixed ASAP. When panning around non-human subjects, the Samsung does a better job at ensuring the entire object is in focus, whereas the iPhone is blurring out the rim of the glass in this case. Apple has always struggled with cinematic shots when non-human objects are in the frame. Another example is in this footage of me sitting in the cafe. Look at the spoon, it has completely disappeared. I mean, don't get me wrong, the Samsung's footage isn't great either, but Apple's is plain awful. Let's see if this can be improved in the future, but my bet is that the iPhone 16 will continue to have the same issue. Now let's take a closer look at some comparisons between both the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra and the iPhone 15 Pro Max when challenged against a professional camera. In this case, it's the Lumix S5 Mark II. Of course, the phones won't perform as well, but it's fun to carry out a little test anyway. In this first shot of me drinking my morning lemon water, the Samsung does a pretty poor job with the edge detection. It's completely blurring out my fallen hair pieces, my fingers, and even the glass. Especially when I put the glass down, it turns into a massive ball of blur. At first, the iPhone seems that is performing okay, but when you take a closer look, you can see that the edge detection of the glass is really struggling. But the video is exposed well with nice color accuracy, and overall it's definitely better than the Galaxy's. Finally, we have the Lumix, which firstly has a wider frame, and of course, you have a lot more flexibility when it comes to adjusting the camera settings. Of course, it also has the most natural look as it does not require software to give it a background blur. Now stepping in a little closer, the real disaster begins. The edge detection on the Galaxy is really struggling here as it completely blurs out the glass, but also my earrings and parts of my face. Nevertheless, the video is relatively sharp. As always, the iPhone's edge detection is better, but it has a tendency to blur edges of objects, and again, the rim of the glass has been missed. Yes, there are slight areas around my hair and face that are also a bit blurry, but overall, it beats the Galaxy. The Lumix, as always, is looking the sharpest and the most natural, which is expected from a DSLR camera. Let's take a look at a couple of other examples. Starting with the iPhone, we have pretty decent contrast with relatively okay color accuracy, but perhaps a bit too much of a yellow tint. The background blur remains consistent, but if you look closely around my head, it does tend to shift in and out of focus, which is rather distracting. On the other hand, the Galaxy's contrast is far too low, and the shadows are way too lifted. The footage looks dull and muted, which makes it lose its punchiness. Of course, you could fix this in post, so it's not that big of an issue. However, take a look at the background blur, specifically where the trees are behind me. The Galaxy seems to have issues with its autofocus as it constantly shifts from sharp to blurry. It's also far too overexposed, especially around my face, losing a lot of details. Coming in a little closer, you start to really see the struggle of the iPhone with edge detection around my head. Unfortunately, it looks very unnatural, but I suppose for a phone, it's still relatively okay. The iPhone has a very warm hue, whereas the Galaxy goes in the other direction, towards a more cooler bluish hue. Apart from the color variations, I personally don't see a huge difference between the two. In both, the edge detection around my entire body looks super unnatural, as it's really having trouble with blending things out smoothly. Time for a mega close-up moment. Okay, so for a phone, this shot coming from the iPhone is pretty good. I mean, of course the edge detection isn't great and the overall color is far too orange, but I don't think that it's an awful shot. The Galaxy's color accuracy is much better, but it does have more problems with its edge detection as more areas seem to be blurry. But to be honest, the video is super sharp and I actually really like it. I haven't got much to say about the Lumix as obviously it has the best shot, but it's definitely interesting seeing its results next to two major flagship phones. Okay, let's do one final round. Here I am standing in this beautiful square in Berlin. This wide shot seems pretty okay coming from the iPhone. Nice consistent background blur and a good deep contrast. Again, I'm not loving the yellow tint, but that's obviously how the iPhone likes to roll. Apart from some major edge detection issues around my face, the shot is fine. The Samsung really surprised me, and in a good way. Firstly, in this wide shot, the color accuracy is spot on. I actually cannot see any edge detection issues, can you? One thing I did notice though is that the background blur isn't really a background blur. I mean, it's there, but barely. Let's get in closer. And you know what? This actually isn't awful. Apart from some slight edge detection problems on the side of my face and on top of my head, I'd say the iPhone has done a pretty good job here. The Galaxy looks a tad overexposed, but I'd say the edge detection is similar to that of the iPhones. As soon as I turn my head, you can really see the software struggling to detect what is going on. Extreme close-ups are always a little tricky. As you can see, the iPhone is having problems, and at times it's given me a little bit of a Michael Jackson moment. Although it has a nice bokeh and warm tone, the edge detection is quite a disaster. The Galaxy has pretty much the same issues, but on top of that, it's also overexposed and the footage looks flat. So let's throw in the Lumix real quick just to show you what the shot should really look like. Not too much to comment on here, especially when comparing it to the other two videos, but at the end of the day, it's a professional DSLR camera and not a phone, so the comparison either way isn't super fair. As I mentioned though, this was just for fun. So that pretty much sums up the cinematic mode on these two devices. What are your thoughts though? Who do you think does it better? Personally, I think that both the Galaxy and the iPhone perform relatively okay, especially considering that they are both phones at the end of the day. I'd say the iPhone has the better edge detection, but the Galaxy has the more accurate color tones. Either way, if you're really serious about shooting cinematic videos, I would personally recommend investing in a proper professional camera, as a phone will never be able to give you the real results you're looking for. But if you just want to have some fun and experiment with cinematic mode, then either of these phones are totally capable of giving you decent results. So as always, give this video a big like if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe to become a part of our Versus community if you aren't already. With that being said, we will see you in the next video, and until then, take care.